Huddersfield Town take on QPR at the John Smith Stadium this weekend. Paul Ogden, our Huddersfield Town commentator for BBC Radio Leeds, here with me on the Look North sofa. Some new faces, first of all, Oggy. Two signings for Town. What do they bring? Tell us a bit more about them. And will either of them play?
Certainly Emma Hughes will have to wait for his Huddersfield Town debut because he's still recovering from an ankle injury that he picked up in pre-season with Wigan. So we expect to see him in a couple of weeks. And on the opposite scale of optimism, Catherine, Mustafa Karayol, very quick, entertaining winger from Middlesbrough. I expect to play. He might come off the bench. That will depend on the exact strategy of Chris Powell's selection tomorrow against Queen's Park Rangers. But the thought of having a crowd pleaser and an entertainer like Mustafa Karayol is a nice one, especially when Huddersfield Town have not scored more than one goal in any of the matches they've played in all competitions so far this season. Who are going out to Wigan has caused much debate as well. But I don't think it's like for like necessarily. I just think it's a tweaking of the squad.
So, formation-wise then, here's my theory. You have Karayol on the left, Scannell on the right, Miller and Wells up front, 4-4-2. Go for it, lots of goals. What do you think?
That sounds absolutely fantastic. I hate to remind you of this, but QPR scored 4 last week, and they scored 2 against Cardiff. They haven't had a perfect start to the season. In fact, they got knocked out of the League Cup by Carlisle at home on Tuesday night. That wasn't quite Chris Ramsey's first selection anyway, so I'm not reading too much into that. I think their team will look much more like the one that beat Rotherham. I would love to see Town go a bit more attacking, but I'm afraid to say that even the signings that he has made include Hughes, who he's not a stopper, but he certainly has a lot of defensive qualities on the left side of Town's midfield once he does come into the reckoning. So there is still a little bit of caution about the way that the team is being structured. Whether or not Jacob Butterfield stays, which is another issue altogether, Catherine. I can't help thinking back to the other times in our recent history at Huddersfield Town when signings have come in anticipation of somebody going out. I'm thinking James Vaughan for Jordan Rhodes. They played in the same team briefly, I think, against Burnley when Town had first got promotion, but that was because Rhodes was about to go. Whitehead and Cody, that's happened recently. Whitehead arrived, Cody went shortly afterwards. So I might be reading too much into it. There's a lot of brinkmanship going on between Derby and Huddersfield. If Derby have got the £4 million that Town want, I think that Butterfield will probably go. But you never know. I'd love to see him stay.
And certainly Chris Powell, speaking to him, would love to see him stay as well. It seems in a way it's almost died down a little bit. You talked to Chris Powell last weekend and he was saying, constant conversations with Jacob Butterfield. This week he says not so much. And you just get the impression that maybe it has reached a stalemate. He's reiterated that unless whoever comes up with a figure that Town think is acceptable, that Butterfield will be going nowhere.
I actually think it's one of Huddersfield Town's boardroom qualities that they are so stubborn in the negotiation. They're not under any panic circumstances to sell Jacob Butterfield or anybody else for that matter. But as we know, everybody's got their value and they know what the price is. And if Derby don't want to meet it, fine, we'll bat on. And I think that should be commended because, Huddersfield Town have got one of the lower budgets in the Championship, certainly in the bottom 10 at a conservative estimate. So, they don't sell without very good reason. And even Derby are going to have to come up with some good reasons to persuade Huddersfield Town to part with Jacob Butterfield. I've got a feeling we're going to be moving on from this quite soon. Karayol will add something. But even if he does, Huddersfield Town have got to be sharper at the front end. He'll help that and stop QPR, whose star might be Charlie Austin. For me, their most potent player is their new Dutch midfielder, the brilliantly named Sharon Sherry, who is one of the big personalities from the Dutch Premier League over the last few years. And he is lethal as an attacking midfielder, so he's got to be stopped by somebody.
Quick word on Alex Smithies as well. Amazing how the fixtures have brought him back to his former club so quickly. Would you expect him to play?
I'd love to see him play, but I think he'll be on the bench, Paul lad. For now, I think his and QPR's long-term strategy is probably to nurture Alex Smithies into that first team, first goalkeeping shirt. But that depends basically on Green and other plans that they might have for him. I don't like to see Alex Smithies sit on the bench. I think he deserves his chance, like Joe Murphy told us. But I think he'll wave politely but cautiously at us tomorrow when he arrives. And I think he'll be on the bench. We probably won't see much of him.
Which might be a bit of a relief in a way, because it would be very nervous. And Joel Lynch did tell us this week he's already had a conversation with Alex Smithies and says he'll be firing shots in from 50 yards as soon as he gets the opportunity. Quick word on QPR. They are a newly relegated team. They've got plenty of cash around, but Huddersfield do tend to play better against the bigger teams who maybe play the better football. It sort of brings the best out of Town.
That has been the case since Huddersfield Town got promoted and in the 3 championship seasons that we've experienced so far. But I hate to be negative, Catherine, but I feel a bit beat up by the start of the season, honestly. And I'm not quite reaching for those consolations yet, because there are some basic things that Town are still not getting right. Yes, they play better against better opposition. The last time we went to Loftus Road, albeit in defeat, was one of Huddersfield Town's headline championship performances in the last 3 years. The way they played, it was just wonderful. Something like that would be gorgeous. I don't feel very optimistic about tomorrow, I'm afraid to say, but I didn't last season against Watford, Brentford, Bolton, Ipswich. Great. That probably is really good news for Huddersfield Town.
We'll take that as a good omen. Oggy, thank you for the time being. All the build-up to Huddersfield Town then at home against QPR. It starts from 2 o'clock, 774am and DAB Digital Radio, and then full commentary with Paul Ogden, with Kieran O'Regan and Nick Hatton at the John Smith Stadium tomorrow. Don't forget you can tweet your views, your score predictions as well. 81333 for text messages. Start those with WYS or tweet us at WYS Daily. See you at 2 o'clock.